Hey guys, so today we're going to do our fourth video in the installment of the 8 basic concepts of the hammer throw. Today we're going to do the counter and the push-pull. So, we've already gone over the wind, the turns, and the entry. Alright? So, today, again, counter, push-pull. And don't worry, I'll explain what all those mean. Alright, so let's start with the counter because it's going to be probably the shortest one. Alright, the counter is basically what it sounds like. You're counterbalancing your weight between the hammer and you. So the hammer is far away from you. What your body has to do is resist the hammer from pulling you forward or pulling you backwards or basically throwing you around. Alright? So you got to think in hammer, your body is basically a stiff brick wall from like your hips all the way down. They do not move. Your back is not tense, but strong. I always like to use strong rather than like tight or stuff. You want to feel like an immovable object basically. Like if someone was to go and try and push you one way or like pull you another way, like so I'm here, and if someone like was to grab the back of my shirt and pull me back, I have to try and feel a resistance to that. So what would I do? I would try and walk forward. If someone was trying to pull me forward and stuff and I had to resist, I think about walking backwards. Alright? It's the same thing. I always like to think of the counter as walking back, walking forwards. You know, so I don't have a hammer, but I'm here, and imagine like something's trying to pull me forward, and you just want to think about walking back. Now, notice when I do that, I'm not going like this and pulling back with my shoulders, because what you don't want to do, and I think that's going to be, sorry, I'm just looking at my sheet. Oh no, that's in 2 videos. I'll be talking about the length and how long you want to be and how to get length in the hammer throw and stuff. But for right now, all I'll say is you don't ever want to feel like you're retracting your shoulders at all in hammer. You want to feel nice and loose. So that's where the hard part comes in. Your upper body is just going to be nice and relaxed. All right, just kind of just there. You know, obviously you're gripping the hammer and there's tension, but you never want to feel like you're trying to pull the hammer back or anything. So that's why you want to counter with your center of mass into the ground, which means that your hips and your body are, and more importantly, you want to think about sitting back. So notice when I do that, I'm here, I'm not just like raising like that, because what happens when I do that? Now I'm up in air. It's hard for me to like actually do anything, and the hammer's just gonna take me because I don't have any weight in my heels. I don't have any weight really. I'm just on like my tippy toes, and I'm just kind of falling backwards. So what you want to think is basically, my rule of thumb for beginners is basically stay in a quarter squat, because you're not going to be moving very fast as a beginner and stuff, or producing a lot of force. All right, so just stay in a quarter squat right here. All right, quarter squat. Basically, never let yourself go up really at all. You never want to extend and fully lock out your knees at all. And that's the same thing in basically any throw. You know, with a couple exceptions, you know, like the block and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part in hammer, you really never extend. In fact, a lot of people, even on their release, still have like 2 bent knees. Now, you know, like you kind of want to get up just a little, but this isn't the video for that. I think that's the second to last video, something like that. Yeah. So for the counter, basically resist opposing forces. So what I mean by that, you want, if the hammer is in front of you, you have to feel like you're sitting back and walking back, like even that, like I'm falling backwards. That's what you want to feel. Because if I actually had a hammer in my hand, you know, I wouldn't be doing that. I'd just be staying in place. if someone was like trying to pull the hammer away from you, which is what it's gonna feel like when you actually throw a hammer. And you know, like when it's behind you, or well, really you're always kind of sitting against it, pretty much, except on the wind you're here. So like you wind, and this is really the only time you're actually gonna be like a little forward on it, just because you know the hammer's actually behind your back and your head. And then as you go through, I'm sitting back and I'm falling back, and it's not because I'm off balance, it's because I'm just sitting back so hard that, you know, if I don't have a weight in my hand, I'm just going to fly backwards. And that's what you want to feel like. So a good rule of thumb is basically you want to feel, I don't know anything to like, basically if you go to like the hammer cage, you go to like one of the poles or something, and you just kind of just grab the pole like this. And then you just kind of just try and sit against it. All right. And that's going to give you the feeling. And you just kind of just lean back, but with your hips. Now, you want to make sure when you counter, you're not just breaking at the hip and just going like that. You sit against it. So, you know, you don't sit in a chair like that, or I hope you don't. You know, you kind of go like that, like a squat. Hence why we do squats. It's here. And I'm just sitting. And the reason why I say sitting is because you want the weight to feel like you're going into the ground. Because the ground and hammer, just like in everything else, and throwing, is your best friend. You want to be grounded. All right? Because if you're not, you have nothing to push against, ever. All right? You can't really push against air. So, basically, once you wind and go in, you're always going to be feeling this. So, how to counter when you're at a low point and a high point. Now, orbit's going to be a different video, but I'm sure if any of you have thrown discus or shot or literally seen a hammer throw, you'll notice that the hammer goes high and then the hammer will go low. That's a high point and a low point. All right? The low point will usually be right here in front of your belly button. And then, and I'm speaking as right-handed throwers, so left-handed throwers will be the opposite. You're going to be here. And the high point will probably be somewhere around here. So if this is a cage right here, you know, it's making a V, it will be somewhere over here. All right? So it'll be like here, low point, high point, low point. All right? It'll be somewhere around there. All right? You don't want it, if you're a right-handed thrower, you don't want it over here. Because now my low point is here, and when I go to release it, I'm gonna just be here instead of here. All right, I'm not gonna get too much into that, but for the purpose of this video, you need to understand a low and high point for me to talk about how to counter a low and high point. So now we got that out of the way. What should a counter look like when you're at your low point? So let's see. I wind. I get here. When I get here, I sit back, and you notice I'm like back here, and I'm a lot more upright. My knees aren't nearly as bent as they're going to be in their high point, and because, you know, the hammer is down and trying to pull me down and forward. So now I'm counteracting by going here, and you notice I'm still trying to stay long. I can still need to let the hammer long, but I'm sitting back against it. All right, and that's what you got to feel. All right. Now, when it's at its high point, so I'm here, low, I'm forward. The second it gets here, you're going to notice, and you see this a lot with hammer throwers, especially if they're any good, is once it gets to its high point, now where are the forces going? They're trying to pull me up and forward. So now to counteract that, I have to go down and back. All right, so you're going to be here, so da-da-da-da, here, and I'm here, and I'm sitting back against it. So you notice I'm not going like this. I'm just lowering my knees to make my center of mass lower. And now I'm here. All right, now obviously this is a big exaggeration because your hammer shouldn't be like way up above your head. But for the purposes of this, I'm just over exaggerating it just so you can get the picture. All right, so I'm here, and I'm here, right here. So I'm not here, I'm not here. All I do is just sit down, and I'm just sitting over here. All right, and then as you go, you're here. I put it back in my low point. I'm back against it, and go. All right, and you just do that over and over and over and over again. All right. So, again, it's very hard to demonstrate this without an actual hammer, and I do apologize that I'm out of breath. I had a workout this morning, so do apologize. So, basically, that's the counter. I hope I explained that well. If not, again, it's very hard to me to demonstrate what a counter should look like. But I do have a video. I think it's probably my most popular, I think it's over 1,000 views. I don't know. But on my YouTube channel, just look at technical playlists. It should be the first video. And it's the push, pull, and counter video. And I actually draw lines, and all I'm actually it's actually an actual hammer throw. Is actually good throwing, and that will give you a more clear picture of what it should actually look like when you're actually throwing a hammer. This is more of just the feeling and stuff, and what not to do, what to do. All right, because again, it's pretty impossible for me to actually demonstrate a counter without something to actually counter against. So I hope you're getting the picture of what I'm trying to say. But basically, in summary for the counter, I probably made that a lot more complicated than it needs to be. But when it's at its low point, you need to be thinking you're back and walking forward. All right? At its high point, you're here, and you just lower your knees and sink down. You want to think of it like you're here, like you're at a clean or snatch. You're here, and then you dip under. So you notice when you dip, you don't dip under snatch like that. You just sink under it like that. And that's what it should feel like. There. All right? And then basically, you never want to try and counter with your shoulders or your elbows or leaning back or leaning forward. You always want to feel your weight go straight into the ground. You never want to feel this or this or this or whatever. All right? You always want to feel here, 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 here. All right? So, and that's the purpose I explained in my turning video, which I think was the last one that I did, why you dip under. You dip under because you gotta be down to counteract the high point. All right? So, that's basically in summation. So, the push-pull. Let's see, how much time do I have? Did I make this every video? Oh, we're so good on time. All right, cool. Push-pull. There are some debates about this. Some coaches don't even like to talk about pushing. They just say, throw it in and the hammer will do the rest. I think that's true for really good throwers. Because, you just put it in so fast. On 3, 4, on your 4 turners, your third turn, your fourth turn, you're kind of just along for the ride. You can't really push very hard. And with the push, people like to describe it as you're here and you're really trying to throw it in and do all this weird stuff. In reality, when you're actually doing that, the push is more you're just kind of just if I had a band resisting me on my right side, and you're just trying to not let it pull you this way or pull you that way. So if I had the band in my left hand right here, and I'm here, and I'm trying to push the band this way, it's just very minute little things with your hand and your right side. Because if you try and go like that, it's very hard to do that. So once you throw in the hammer wants to go. The hammer wants to turn. So what you gotta think is the pull. I never really want to say pull. As you get very, 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 very good, like 70 plus meters, there is a little more the left side does. I would recommend for that watching Sean Donnelly's technical analysis on Prismos Cosmos, because he talks about that a lot more better than I would. Because obviously, Sean Donnelly is 78 meter hammer thrower, one of the best in U.S. history. He's gonna know more than me, One, because he threw further and longer than I did, and he's Sean Donnelly. So yeah, I would recommend go watch that video if you want to learn a lot more about your left side. For the purposes of this, and I'm assuming if you're a 70 meter thrower, you don't really need to watch this video. So, although if you are, hello. But if you're a 70 meter thrower, girl or boy or man or woman, chances are you know what you're doing. So you don't probably need to watch this video. All right, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to say don't even try and use your left side at all. Because the second you try and hammer, the second you try to go like this with your left hand, you're going to start pulling. All right? So I always like to think your left side is basically, because I'm a shot disc coach mainly, is your block. So discus, your block is here, and it's just solid, immovable, and your right side just works around it. I like to think of hammer like that too. Your left side is here, and your right side just pushes around and goes in. Now, what you want to think about when you're pushing with your right side is not just your arm or your chest or your hand. It's this entire right side. All right? So it's not just, it's, I'm here and I feel my entire hip, core, chest, foot, everything is working that right side. All right? I'm not just, That's not very powerful. A little slap isn't powerful. But if I try and use my whole right side, right here, and it's just together, so I'm here. All right? I always like to do a thing where, so I'm here, and I go like this, and I just clap. All right? Just to get people to not pull, and to just feel their right side hit their left side and turn. All right? That's a concept I like to teach people when, I'm teaching beginners like how to actually push a hammer. Some coaches may not like that, but whatever. Cool. And a way to work on your push is basically just doing single arm drills. So you just have the hammer in your right hand or your non-glove hand, and you just do turns. And you just try and keep the hammer right in front of your belly button. All right? The whole time. I'm here and I'm pushing all the way through. And then with your left hand, to avoid the pulling, it's not here. You never want to feel that. It's just here, and I'm just trying to keep it as solid as possible. Just right here. All right? Now, beginners, when you're just learning, you'll go like this just because the hammer's not going fast enough for you to just keep it right in front of your belly button or like a little bit on your right side. So like you'll see like that. That's a good thing. That's what beginners should feel. Just to feel like the hammer go around and all that. As you get better and better and you see like really good throwers, it almost kind of looks like they're dragging the hammer or the hammer's behind them. In reality, the hammer's going so fast. They're countering so hard. They're pushing so hard that the hammer will just end up just right in line with your belly button or just a little bit on your right side. All right, just because like just going like this and having to push the hammer all the way here. That's what they're trying to do, but the hammer's just moving so fast that it just ends up in line with their belly button. All right, and it's a very hard thing to explain. Luckily, I know a couple 70+ meter hammer throwers that were able to explain that feeling to me, because I sure as hell never felt that. I was a chronic puller in hammer. But I also didn't have a very good coach to teach me hammer, so whatever. I'm not bitter at all about that, even though I think I could have been a pretty good hammer thrower if I actually had a competent coach. But whatever. Yeah, but basically, that's push and pull. You're pushing into a solid, rigid, not rigid, because rigid implies like stiff, but it's just solid wall. Basically, you're just here. All right, and I'm just constantly pushing right here, and my right side, my whole right side is going into there. Now, how does it relate? Let me check the time. All right. Now, how does the counter and the push relate? So, I'm going into my wind. I push it in. As I'm pushing, I'm countering. So, it's not a push counter. Everything is in line. Everything has to happen together in hammer, just like everything else in the throws. All right. It's hard to move just this and not move your right side in shot and disc. All right. In hammer, you can't really push and not counter, because what really speeds up the hammer is you sitting back hard. You can produce a lot more force going this way than you can going this way. All right? Your hips and the body naturally is strong going backwards and forwards. It is not very strong rotating. It's just biomechanics. And I know some people will be like, oh, but this athlete's super strong and stuff. I guarantee you, a elite thrower can sled pull more than they can like have a barbell and just go like this. All right, people aren't doing this with like hundreds of pounds and whatnot. Okay, so biomechanically and like physiology, like physically, your body is naturally stronger and more explosive going backwards and forwards. All right, than rotating. So you got to think, when you're pushing in, what really speeds up that ball is you sitting back. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do it that hard because I don't want to fall and break all my stuff. But that's what you got to think. So I'm here, and I'm pushing it in. And you notice I'm like flying backwards. That's because I don't have anything in my hand. All right? So that's what you got to think. The push has to work in conjunction with the counter. You can't have one without the other. All right? If you never have a counter, you can't push. If you don't have a push, it's hard to counter. All right? They're basically one and the same thing, pretty much. All right? Again, if you want a more detailed video, like a way more in-depth video of someone, of like me actually critiquing an actual thrower doing the actual throw, not really critiquing, but more of just like what it actually looks like when you're actually throwing, you know, rather than me just like flying all over the place, then go watch that video. And other than that, thanks for watching. Hope you guys learned a lot. Next week, we got the orbit. And yeah, I already touched on that a little bit, but yeah, other than that, hope you all had a great day, and thanks for watching. Have a good one.